Over the past 6 years, we've helped hundreds of music producers land their first paycheck producing songs for clients, and then show them how to do that consistently in order to make a sustainable full-time living that they control. And in this video, I'm going to show you the exact steps we use so that you have more clarity on how to get started yourself. Because right now, you and a lot of other producers probably feel like making a living doing this is really complicated and overwhelming, but it's not. You probably just have too many options to choose from, so it seems complicated and overwhelming. There are hundreds of producers now on the internet telling you specifically how they themselves make a living, and that's not a bad thing. I enjoy watching those videos myself. But the issue is that a lot of those success stories, despite being awesome and inspiring, are actually an anomaly. And what I mean by that is, it's not how most music producers earn a living. The majority of working music producers who earn a stable living every month still do it the old-fashioned way. They are really great at their craft, and they have a network of clients who pay them to produce songs, typically multiple songs each year. Then they go on to add other ways of earning income as a producer. And in my experience, any music producer can become capable of doing this. But first, let me define what I mean when I say music producer, because there are a lot of different definitions, and none of them are wrong, but this is what I mean. I'm referring to music producers who are essentially a one-stop shop and can produce songs start to finish for artists. I'm not referring to beat makers, because rappers typically don't hire producers, they buy beats, so this approach is not relevant there. I'm also not referring to composers who compose music for films or video games. Although some of the things I talk about in this video today could apply, the tools that I'll be showing aren't really relevant for composers. And last but not least, I'm not referring to producers or DJs who are solely focused on releasing and performing their own music. This is for freelance music producers who get paid a production fee to produce songs for artists. And some of you might be thinking, why would an artist pay a producer nowadays? They could just learn how to produce themselves or go find an instrumental on the internet for free. So, great question. Let's start with Producer Business 101. You're not wrong for thinking that, but typically this indicates to me that what you think a music producer sells is the technical ability to produce a song. But that's not really what a freelance music producer actually sells. It's part of it. But what they really sell is some version of the following three things. Number one is taste, which is an artistic perspective that is unique to you, and other people ideally want that perspective on their projects. Number two would be direction, which is guidance. Humans love having guidance when they are trying to accomplish something that means a lot to them. And number three, completion, which is simply a guarantee that the project will get done and in a timely manner. This one seems insignificant, but it's the same reason that personal trainers exist. Everyone technically knows how to lose weight. You burn more calories than you eat. And we can all go on YouTube and get a free workout and diet plan. However, most people still struggle to lose weight. What a personal trainer sells is completion, ensuring that what you came to do gets done. You could argue that this is the most important of the three. And you'll see how we incorporate these three selling points when we get to step 4 of this process. But let's start with step 1, finding the artist to work with. So finding artists is actually the easiest step because there are so many artists and so many different ways to find them. However, I will usually have my producers start by using a tool called Viberate. It's kind of like using Google, but instead of searching for answers to life's biggest questions, you can just simply use it to search for specific artists that you may want to work with. You'll just select a few parameters like genre, location, and size of the artist. Scroll down the list and hit play until you hear something you like. And when you click into their profile, it will give you every piece of data you could ever want to know about that artist. Now, the only potential downside to this tool is that it does cost a few $100s per year. But as of making this video, they do offer a free trial period, so you can at least start this process. For other free options to find artists, check out the video I link in the description below. So your first action item is to use Viberate and go make a list of 100 artists that interest you. If you want to be organized, then you can make a quick spreadsheet with the artist name, a link to their Viberate profile because you may want to revisit it, and the link to their Instagram profile, which you will also find on Viberate right up here. A quick pro tip for you: if there are some artists on the list that you are really pumped to meet and they stand out more than some of the others, then put those towards the back of your list. That way, by the time you get to them, you'll be more comfortable with this process and have more practice under your belt. You're not going to reach out to all 100 at once. You'll do maybe 5 to 10 at a time and let those conversations ride out for a few days, which will prevent you from getting overwhelmed. Now that you have your list of 100 artists, step 2 is making the initial contact with them over on Instagram. We can't work with artists if we don't meet any artist. And I'm going to assume that for most of you watching this video, you aren't in a position yet where artists are reaching out to you, or at least not enough of them. You could run TikTok ads or do other things, but for the sake of this video, we're going to go with what most producers that we work with do when they are starting out. But there's one important thing that I want you to understand about step 2, because a lot of producers either feel weird about reaching out to people or they do it, but it doesn't work well for them. The thing to understand is that the point of outreach is not to go sell anything to anyone. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you feel like that's the sole purpose of doing this, then you'll either A, bring a weird energy to the conversation, or B, you'll have a mental block about it and won't actually do it at all, probably. I don't think about this as I'm only reaching out to this person to sell them something. I'm thinking about it as I'm going to network with people because that is what we all do in the music business. And the byproduct is that it will increase the probability of me being in a situation where it's appropriate to make an offer to work with someone. Up until that point, there is no reason for me to think about sales. I'm not in selling mode. I'm thinking about establishing a connection with someone, and that could lead to a working relationship as a result, but I'm okay if it doesn't. And the other purpose of outreach is that you will better understand the artists that you want to work with, which makes you a more valuable producer. Think of it as research. If you like the content we make here at Dark Label, then just know it's because all we do all day is talk to music producers about their business. I don't really sit around and think all of this stuff up for YouTube videos. We're just out in the market doing it every day with the 100 producers that we currently work with. So now that you know how to think about it, here is your action step. You're going to send them a DM on Instagram, and there are a few approaches that you can choose from to craft your opening message. My business partner, Aaron, says, network with others how you would want to be networked with. That just means to pick a style that you yourself would respond well to, because that's what you'll be most comfortable doing with others. Nobody can really use the exact same script for this because it's not going to sound like how you talk, but here are some elements that you can choose from to craft your opening message. And you don't need to use all of them, but these are just some options. Element 1, introduce yourself and make it clear that you're a producer. This one is pretty basic and will probably be part of your opening message every time. Element 2, compliment their work, but do it in a way a producer would, not a fan. Typically, this just means more detail and something that shows you recognize their taste. This is how musicians talk to each other. Even if they aren't a super developed artist yet, you can still compliment what you feel are their best qualities currently. If you think they're awful, then obviously don't lie to them. They just shouldn't be on your list of 100 artists to contact. Go find another artist. Element number 3, surprise them with cool data. Most artists don't know that Viberate even exists, and it gives all of this data. Something like, hey, I noticed your YouTube channel is in the top 30 for pop music in Denmark. Congrats on that. They will wonder how you even know that and probably find it intriguing that you do. It's just a simple icebreaker. Element number 4, ask an industry-related question in order to open a loop and get a response. A lot of producers will ask vague questions that make them look like more of a fan than a producer. Not that there's anything wrong with being a fan, but this is a different dynamic. Instead of, how are you doing today? Ask something like, do you have management representation? Or who was the mix engineer on this song you just released? And element number 5 is optional, but if you yourself prefer that someone is just straight to the point in their first message to you, then feel free to mention that you're looking for artists to work with and that you think you do a great job with their music. There's nothing technically wrong with that approach. Just use any of the elements above to craft an opening message in your style and network with others the way that you would want to be networked with. And here's what's going to happen next. So the majority of them may not respond at all, and that's okay. Just keep going down your list. For the ones that do respond, you're trying to gauge their level of enthusiasm and willingness to have a conversation. If they seem shut off or just respond with a one-word answer like, thanks, then our producers typically just like the message or say, you're very welcome, and move on. Our data shows that 9 times out of 10, those artists don't lead to fruitful conversations, and we end up wasting a lot of time trying to pull teeth just to get them to talk instead of just moving on to find the right artists faster. Our producers are only going to spend time having a conversation if the artist is putting out a vibe that they want to have a conversation. Just get to the ones that respond well to your opening message, because you don't need that many artists to make a solid living if you use the business model we recommend. And I'll talk about that later in the video. If you have a question about this step or any of the steps in this video, then just ask it in the comment section below. Or if you want more personalized help with implementing all of this, then click the link in the description and contact us through our website. So let's move on to step 3. Now that you're in a DM conversation with an artist, it's important to know what your next step is. A lot of producers go network with artists, but they don't have any direction on what to do next or where to take things when the conversation is going well. I hate to use this as an example, but the example of dating is kind of the easiest way to explain this, because when you are dating someone, you always have a next step in mind. First, you may buy them a drink or coffee, then ask them to go to dinner, then ask for a second date, then maybe you both decide to make it official, then you move in together, then get married, etc., etc. The point is that if you're interested in someone, then you don't just sit there and talk in circles. You generally have an idea of what the next step would be. So in this case, our next step would be to see if there is chemistry creatively between the artist and move the conversation out of the DMs into real life. This just increases the probability that we will be put into a situation where it makes sense and is appropriate to make them an offer to work together, or they may even ask us to do that. The idea here is that unless the artist trusts that you can elevate their songs and has a bond with you, then the likelihood that they will want to hire you at some point is very low. And as of now, you're still technically a stranger to them until we complete step 3. Just like step 2, there are a few options to choose from when it comes to different ways to see if there is creative chemistry between you and the artist. But the main approach our producers use is to simply offer the artist some kind of small session. Typically, this isn't anything much longer than an hour or 2. It could be a co-write or just working on a demo the artist already has. You could show them how to do something if they self-produce and are having an issue, or just listening through song starters together to see if there are any tracks you have that might spawn an idea for them. I've even had producers build enough trust and bond by just having a solid phone conversation or Zoom session with the artist, just talking, not even making music. That will just depend on how experienced you are as a producer, or if you already have like a bunch of content out there. If you are new to this or have less experience, or you don't have a lot of content out there that shows who you are and what you've done, then you'll just have to work a little harder at the start to build trust. That's all. It's also important to note that at this stage, our producers do make it clear that they are working producers and are prioritizing client work over collaborations, just so there's no surprises later or that anyone feels like you pulled some bait and switch on them. Now, at that point though, they may dip out or say that they don't hire producers, and that's fine. We'll just take that as they don't want to do the session and we move on. They might start asking you about your rates before agreeing to do a session. In that case, our producers typically say something like, "It just depends on the project. My preference is to work with fewer artists long-term over just doing one-off song projects. So if there's chemistry, then I do my best to make it work." They just keep it casual. Again, if The artist dips out at this stage, then we just move on. Same thing goes for if they book the session, but just don't show up and ghost us. We just move on. It's a little more annoying when it's a local session versus a remote one, but at least there is closure, because the chance of them becoming a long-term client anyway that does a lot of work with us is probably not going to happen. Another pro tip for you, whether you're doing this locally or remotely, it's ideal if this is an attended session or phone call where you are interacting in real time. We generally recommend this over something like just emailing them some instrumentals, because even if they like the instrumentals, that doesn't mean that there is creative chemistry between you. Then you're just kind of waiting to see if they ever reply, and you're constantly playing follow-up game with people. I'd rather you just spend that time finding the right artists that want to work with you instead. This may seem like a lot of work just to get one client, but the average artist could spend anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 per year with our producers if they are using what we call the momentum model to operate their business. It's kind of like a retainer, basically. This model allows you to hit your income goals with less clients and ultimately less work once you've gone through the process of building your core base of artists that you work with. I've linked a video below in the description that explains that momentum model, but before you go watch that, we have one more step here. Let's talk about step 4. When I was managing a production team here in Nashville, we would do a lot of co-writes where the artist would come over and we would start building up a song together. Basically what I just explained in step 3. If there was chemistry and the artist was really pumped about the session we just had, then we would initiate a conversation to discuss officially either finishing that song or working on something else together. Sometimes the artist would even bring it up first and ask us how we work with people, what do we charge, etc. If they didn't bring it up, then I just ask them first how they felt the session went. If their response was neutral, then I would just tell them, hey, cool, well, we had a great time. And I might ask them if they knew any other artists that they think we should have a session with. I wouldn't push to have a sales conversation. And it's okay if their response is neutral or they weren't feeling it. We didn't nail every session we had. Sometimes the chemistry just wasn't there that day. But we would always learn a lot from it, and many times would still get a referral, and those could lead to clients. However, if they are obviously pumped about how the session went, then I'm going to start asking them questions about what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish this year, and what obstacles are they running into, so that I can determine how we fit into that picture as producers and then make them an offer to work together, because that would be the appropriate time to do so. Basically, I'm asking them questions around the 3 selling points we spoke about at the start of this video: taste, direction, and completion, because that is going to be my offer, my plan that I bring to them in some form. Sometimes this conversation would happen during the session or right after the session, and sometimes I would book it as a separate phone call if we were like getting tight on time. I usually like to have about 30 to 40 minutes to have that conversation with an artist. After that, I would send a proposal via email that would just recap what we went over on the phone. And if they were down, then we would get to work. Now, as you go through your list of 100 artists that you found from Viberate, you're just trying to see if you can get through all 4 steps with one of them. If you don't, then that's okay. Just make a new list of 100 and try again. Obviously, there's so much more to all 4 of these steps that I can't cram into a YouTube video, but just you trying and having the majority of the information of what to do and doing it over and over, you will make much more progress than sitting around thinking about what to do or guessing at stuff. Because this isn't just a numbers game or a bunch of tactics strung together. Once you're able to get through all 4 of these steps, then you technically will now be in a position where you have developed the ability to get work on demand whenever you need it. You have total control of your income. If you need a project, you go get it. And that is probably the most important skill to have as a working music producer, outside of making great songs, of course. And even though it drives the producers here at Dark Label crazy sometimes, we really push them to do the work so that they have this ability, because once they do, it unlocks a confidence that allows them to go off and do anything they want as a music producer. And many of them have gone on to build things that are way bigger than a simple freelance business working with artists. It's been pretty incredible to watch. What I showed here today isn't the only way to get clients, obviously. There's a lot of ways to get clients as a producer. We've just used this particular approach to prove many, many times that any producer can go make money, make a living, if they have work ethic, are talented at making music, obviously, and they just get good at these 4 steps. And if you want to hear me go a little deeper on step 4, which is communicating your value to the artist, then watch this next video.